Hello, everybody. So my name is Miguel, and Tran is in the front row. She's scared to be up here, so. Tran and I come from visual effects. We worked in visual effects for about 12, 13 years, and our focus was always creatures, creature modeling, creature texturing. And a few years ago, we decided that we wanted to leave our job, save enough money, leave our job, and just try to focus on doing our own stuff. And if we failed, then fuck it, but we're going down in flames. So we're like, we're going all in. If we fail, that's it. But at least we could say we tried. So I'll show you a little bit of our stuff right now. So this is a collection of all the work we've done independently. So I took the credit, but we did all the work together. So before we did that, like I was saying, we come from visual effects. Our focus was creatures. This is Tran's work and my work jumping back and forth. This is mine. The Transformer stuff is Tran's. And we loved it. We love visual effects. We love everything about it, but we just wanted to do it on our own terms and do our own stories. We just didn't want to do it for a company anymore. So we did that for 12 years. This was the film that finally broke us, which was Jack the Giant Slayer. So when we finished this, we were like, okay, we really have to do our own thing. One of my goals was to work for Phil Tippett, which I was able to do. Phil Tippett was the creature supervisor for all the Star Wars movies. So I was like, that's my dream. I just want to go work for Phil. And while I was there, we started coming up with a plan. And I'm like, let's buy a camera. Let's buy the Red One camera, which is so expensive that we knew that if we bought it, we wouldn't fuck around with it. So we're like, once we buy this, we have to get this done. And what I realized is once I had it, I could rent it back to Tippett. So I could pay it off by renting it back to them. So this was the first thing I ever shot with the camera, which was Drag Me to Hell. So this was all done by, it was modeled by Lauren Peterson, who was, he's like the 4th or 5th employee at ILM. And you can see this hell pit is made out of like cereal and like, I think aluminum foil. So, and this was all shot with a camera that we ended up using for all our other projects. So when we felt we were ready, we did our first short film, which is called The Green Ruby Pumpkin. And like everything we do, we built this entirely in our living room. We are the visual effects department, it's the two of us, and then we usually hire a rigger and an animator to help us, but we do everything else. You can see we shoot on top of laundry baskets, on top of Star Wars books, and it's just all smoke and mirrors. At the end, it looks like it costs a lot of money, but it's as cheap as you could possibly be. So this project, we wanted to design everything ourselves, every costume, everything is just completely built by hand. We finished this, and we thought, okay, we're hoping to jump into commercials, and we got the attention of this guy, Skrillex, who's a famous musician. I always joke around about the fact that I didn't know that Skrillex even existed. I thought it was a barbecue cleaner. So when he started emailing me to do work for him, I never replied because I thought it was like, again, a barbecue cleaner, like Grillex. And apparently he won 6 Grammys and he's a big deal, so I finally replied. The cool thing about this Halloween short that I showed you is it also got the attention of Legendary Pictures, and they brought us in to design the look and feel of this movie called Krampus. Initially, we were supposed to just do very little things on it, small assets, and we were doing such a good job that we had to expand a company. We ended up basically running a small design studio, and we had a full 2D and 3D art team, and we basically ran the entire look and feel of this movie. So the final Krampus that you see in the film was designed by our team. All the monsters in the movie. So they brag about how this is a practical effects movie, but this was all done digitally and then 3D printed out by Weta Workshop, sorry. So this is like the very early designs. This is the first design of the killer clown. And then at the end, everything was done in V-Ray. So we were doing, because we come from visual effects, we were able to turn in fully looked at turntables, so when we would give it to the people that were going to fabricate it, they could tell exactly what everything was made out of, and it made everybody's job much easier. So we finished that project, which was great, and we wanted to do something completely different from the Green Ruby Pumpkin. The Green Ruby Pumpkin is it's about little girls trick-or-treating and who has the best costume. It's as simple a story as could be. What we didn't think we were going to get is we got the attention of producers and studios that were starting to give us scripts to make a feature film. But all of them were very kiddie in nature, and I don't say that like I don't like, we love animation, we love all that type of stuff, but it was the worst type of kid films. So we decided to try to do something completely different. We wanted to do something that was longer format, so 30 minutes. We wanted to do something that was a period film. We wanted something where the visual effects fell into the background and was not in your face. And we also wanted to do it in half Japanese and half English, just to make our lives fucking harder. So that's what we did. So this is a short trailer.
母が人魚を殺めたのは13の頃。
So that is literally done entirely in our living room. So I'll show you in a second what I mean by that. So we wanted to come up with a story using our strengths. And at that point, of course, we're creature people. So we're like, let's do something about cryptozoology. Tran introduced me to this myth from Japan, the Ningyo, which is a mermaid. If you consume its flesh, it would bring you immortality. So we wanted to do something that was like an Indiana Jones, but instead of it being a Judeo-Christian artifacts, it's more of like what's called cryptids. It's basically creatures that have never been proven to be real. So the Ningyo was a great one to do first. It's not very known. outside of Japan, so we wanted to redesign it so it didn't look like a monkey sewn onto a fish, which is what they originally were. We wanted something that felt very H.P. Lovecraft and Jules Verne, and we also wanted it to take place in 1911 in Los Angeles. I just love this aesthetic, so we went with something like this. And anybody will tell you, if you're trying to do something on a budget, never do period films. But we wanted to do something, we just like this period. We think it's much cooler than modern day. We wanted to touch on some of the themes of the time, like early conservation, and the fact that creatures were still being discovered that were considered mythological up to that point. The big one is the okapi, which at the time was a big deal. It was the unicorn of Africa. When they found it, they're like, oh my God, it's there, I can't believe it, let's kill it. So, anyway, so we started with this, with our limitations in mind. Everything we do, we know there's limitations. So when we're storyboarding, we actually photograph my brother with the 5 lenses that we own. We don't just think like, oh, let's just get whatever we can get, because we can't afford it. So from this point, even from this early stage, we're already like, we only have a 24, a 50, a 35, and an 80. So if you can't get it in those 4 lenses, we can't do it. So we storyboarded this entire thing, and this is the stuff that we showed early on to the Chaos group. And we started doing a bunch of concept art, and we started bringing in some of our friends at this point to help us out with the look and feel of this movie. We really wanted it to be Indiana Jones meets There Will Be Blood. We wanted that weird aesthetic. So we now have to build all of this, and we have to build half of it digital and half of it real, and whatever is real, it has to be done in our house. So we got this big warehouse space in downtown LA, which is our house, and we had to figure out, okay, it has stairs, so we'll put a cool stair scene. We have a second floor, so we could have people above. And that's basically how we plotted everything. It's like, oh, it's long, so we'll have a long corridor. I mean, we thought about this stuff it's so embarrassing to admit how we came up with all of this stuff. We have a window back here that goes into our bedroom. I'll show you that window in a little bit. So we had to build everything ourselves, and we've never used a circular saw. We've never used any of this stuff. We're CG geeks, so all of a sudden we're like, crap, we have to buy wood, we have to stain the wood, and this was our living room. It's completely filled with wood, with flats everywhere. We had to install wood paneling, wood floors, we had to put Victorian wallpaper, so this is what it looked like before, and this is what it became. So that's mixed with CG. We had to start going around and getting a bunch of antiques, but we couldn't afford to just go to, you know, a Craigslist to an antique store and buy antiques, because we couldn't afford it. So we had to buy crappy stuff and restore it. We couldn't afford antique books, so we would get dollar books, put them in the oven, put coffee on it, and make them look like old manuscripts. Everything had to be done for super cheap. This is the window, and that's the final shot. So it looks like it's looking outside, but it's really just looking out to our living room. When a lot of people would see this, they're like, oh, it's cool how you made the window up high so he's like in a prison. And the truth is there's just a sink on the other side. So you can see this is what we were building everything. So even though we didn't build out everything because a lot of it was going to be digital extensions, we still wanted to build as much as possible. So the other thing is we needed to populate this world with a bunch of creatures. If it is about cryptozoology, we have to show off the creatures, and we really wanted everything to feel plausible. We wanted everything to feel like you could find this in Brazil or in, you know, Mexico or Thailand. So we went in, had our friends jump in at this point as well and start designing some of these creatures. We wanted everything, like I said, to not feel necessarily like Star Wars, but like you could find this somewhere. So these are the final 3D models. Every creature had around 400 to 500 face shapes. So you could get any expression you wanted on this. And these were done by our friend Chris Boschatnik, the face shapes. I think the eyes alone have like 30 or 40 shapes. It's a lot of stuff. We did male and female versions of the characters, so the striping was different. You can't really tell in the short film, but we could tell, and we wanted that level of attention to everything. So this is the animation Play Blast. This is the face rig for the little guy, so you can see everything was controllable. This is the cages, so we don't rely on displacements for anything. Everything has to be modeled. Displacements only go on the characters. And then this is the final shot. So everything is geometry. So this is just a few more characters. You can see how complex some of the face rig stuff is. So a few more characters. So this is a centipede that you see in I think like 2 or 3 shots. And you can see we put a lot of work into the topology, but there is still some displacement on the characters in particular. Okay? So like I was saying, everything should feel plausible, so even the props had to feel like they were grounded. So we would look at stuff that we loved, like Peruvian elongated skulls, Kapala skulls, and Tibetan robes, and we combined all of that to create these monks that are just in the background. It's just a prop in the film. They don't play a big role at all. And we just wanted to make people look at this stuff and be like, what the hell is that? I want to know more about that. So if we did another short, it could be about these giants, or it could be about this one thing that we spent no time on, but it just made the world feel much richer. Even though I said we wanted everything to be plausible, we were like, wait, but this is a giant. You know, how can that be? You know, giants aren't real. And then we started looking at these photos. And these are the pygmy tribes in the same forest that the okapi, the unicorn of Africa, was found. And you could see how these guys look like giants. So we're like, why can't there be one other class of, taller group of people? So this is just a few more. I think there's like 12 creatures in the film. So a lot of this stuff was using photogrammetry. We would go out to the desert and photograph rocks and make it feel like it was underwater. A big part of the film is underwater, so we had to look into some of the technology that was already created. A big influence and a big regret on our part was using the Carminal suit. This is a suit from the 1800s. We thought we were cool because we were using an authentic suit, and everybody tells us, oh, it's BioShock. And we're like, fuck BioShock, this is fucking Carminal suit. So whenever we hear the word BioShock, we like scream inside. But this is the influence that we looked at. And so we changed the suit a bit. We made the hands functional. We didn't want to have a tube out the back, so we put a primitive oxygen tank. And this is, I think, the first animation test. This is a submarine. Definitely inspired by the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The Nautilus is based on a barracuda. This is based on a sperm whale. Okay. And the digital sets. like I said, we couldn't build everything, so a bunch of this stuff had to be done digitally. We tried shooting in real locations, so we did try to go to the museums, and it was like $12,000 a day. So we realized we have to build all this stuff digitally. And if you've ever built a skeleton, you know, you hear like hipposkeleton, doesn't sound that bad, it's just one skeleton, but it's made out of hundreds of parts, and each one of those bones is completely unique from the other. So it's no longer one model, it's 200 models. So a lot of this stuff is very small in film. We also put a bunch of Easter eggs in there because I'm a huge emblem fan. So we put the ark. This is just so you could see like a door. Everything is poly-modeled. You know, there is no ZBrush here. So this is all the stuff you've seen up to this point. This is a little sequence so you could see how we put it together. So that's a small clip, yeah. So the lecture hall was another big one. As you can see in the early concept, there's a ton of people there. We could only afford one person. So how do we fill this up? We have to build a bunch of digital doubles to populate this entire lecture hall. So we had to do cloth sim on 80 people. This is the only thing, this and there's a few foreground. My brother I could get for cheap, so we just stuck him in the foreground. But then everything else is just completely digital. So you could see everything had to be modeled out. every little detail. The approach that we take is if you over-model, the lighting will just look better and the textures can be crappier. So it seems to work. So this is just the gray shaded topology, the raw beauty pass, the only thing that's actually real, and then the final shot. And this is just a bunch of other views of the lecture hall. You know, just keep in mind, this is literally our living room, and there's just a green wall there. A shot like this, impossible, we couldn't afford any of this. Oh, actually, let me show you this. So, this piece, we do want to have a few realistic, real pieces on the set. So this piece was designed in Maya and then actually built in real life. So you can see we built 2 of them, as uninteresting as possible. But if you look at this shot, that's the piece right there. If you look at this shot, that's the piece right there. If you look at this shot, that's the same piece right there. So our entire lecture hall, in terms of the real physical set, is that one plank of wood that we showed you, and in every single shot, there it is. But it's just movie magic. It's not all about just doing it all in CG. It's like, how can we cheat this one stupid plank and just use it over and over and over and over to fill in this entire lecture hall in all our close-up shots. So, sorry, going back to this one, this is the only thing we built in our living room. That's the final shot. And this was also a big learning experience for us because this is when you could see all this stuff was modeled, it's so beautifully detailed out, but we realized that we have to stop lighting like modelers, we have to light like cinematographers and let most of the detail just fall into darkness, and it made for a more interesting image anyhow. So there's just a few other shots. And it's just all just done in Maya and then rendered in V-Ray. So you can see every plank on the floor is actual geometry, so they're all leveled differently. All the little architectural details, everything is actual geometry. So we had to do normal mapped versions of this because it just would not render at all. So, but you could see it's originally just geo. And that's it. That's how we shot it all. So even the rug had to have a displacement map on it so that you could feel that there's different heights to the fibers. There's not a straight line anywhere, so if you look at all the rugs, everything is broken up. There's no straight lines on anything. We tried to license these 2 shots from the Field Museum, and they were asking for thousands of dollars per shot to put in the intro. So we couldn't afford it, so we had to build it in CG. Previs also, this was a big thing for us, is we didn't shoot every single scene in our house. There was a few scenes that we realized if we kept shooting this in our house, we were going to keep working on this for another 4 years. So there was a sequence that we shot in a real location, but we wanted to make sure that we planned every single thing before we went there. Our previs is nowhere near as cool as Kevin's, so, but let's take a look at it. You can see it's really rough. It's all poser models. But all our angles, everything was planned. Can you raise the volume a little bit?
その目で確かめたのですか?
ここに写真が。
And then, now you can bring it in, sorry. And then this is the final sequence with all the plotting that we did in Maya. We obviously didn't previs this beginning part. And that's the same car, because we could only afford one.
台所の上汚れているから足元気をつけて。
清姫様。
アトリガ入りなさい。
マロが持っている地図は本物です。
本当か。その目で確かめてるのですか。
ここにフィルムが。我々の申し出は断られました。彼らはマロから地図を取り上げ、フィールドミュージアムに売り渡すつもりです。運送を阻止することもできますが。
フィルムジウムを回るなしでは何も見つけられない。それよりもミコ、
はい、
お願いします。
はい。
So that's how we plotted everything. This next video is just showing a lot of the stuff we talked about, but you could see it a little bit more detail here. So that's, again, the living room. Now you can see the individual scenes. This is when we were constructing the big room. So the green is the only thing that's real. This is our crew on a big day. So there's a cinematographer, a sound guy, and whoever happened to be there to move lights. So all the props. This is how we shot most of it. You can see it's on a crappy scaffold. It was $100, and then everything else is just modeled. This one's pretty funny, so you could see we mixed it up. So on some shots we would put hats on sticks. So when you would look through it, it looked like there was a crowd, but it was just as low-tech as can be. This is our cave. So we scanned these rocks on the side of the railroad track, so you can see a little bit of highlights on the side. Then this is just completely digital. This was just a walkthrough of the set. You could see how much stuff we did put together. And then the top section is all CG, so all the skeletons on top. we had a motion control system that was donated to us by Kessler. So we were able to do repeating motions. So this would be our first pass, so we could get our green screen, another pass for atmosphere, the CG background, and then the foreground was rendered completely, shot completely separately. That way we could isolate everything and we could still shoot it with real fog, but still keep the dramatic lighting. You can see the piece of wood that I was talking about, then we just put little highlights. So you would imagine that the rest of the wall is wood. It's just a little highlight and you buy it. So you can see on this day, we didn't even have a cinematographer. The actor's gonna control the camera himself. So he's gonna walk out of frame and then turn off the camera. So when we were trying to rent a process trailer, it was thousands of dollars a day. So we just threw it on the back of a U-Haul truck for $75. So everything was just low tech. If you notice, the majority of the camera moves on the shots that you saw are just nodal rotations. We didn't have a lot of render power, so everything was just rotations. So we could just render a big overscan image instead of rendering hundreds of frames. And a lot of this stuff is just put together also in Nuke, just combining a bunch of different elements to get it to look more complex. So this is when we were building the office. That's the window. So we were doing the antique books. You guys saw that already. This will show you some of the face shapes on some of the other characters, so you could see there's just a ton of work, and I think these guys were only seen in 2 shots, which is the ones you saw. So the turnaround time for a creature from modeling to rigging was about a month, and we would only put it in a shot or 2, which was really inefficient, but we needed it to build this bigger world. So that's all the breathing mechanism. So anyway, so we finished after a few years of total hell, and we were just completely exhausted, and we got a lot of love from V-Ray, from the visual effects community. This is when we finally premiered it at Noman School of Visual Effects, which helped us produce this film. And this was our Art of the Niño exhibit. So you can see, one thing I didn't mention is all the costumes were also made by us. So they're all either handmade or they're repurposed antiques that had to be retrofitted because there was nothing that actually looked like this. So the warriors that are up on the top, all the masks are hand sculpted, cast in urethane, and then the rest of the costume is put together using a bunch of pieces. And then we started getting this attention, which was great. Walt Disney invited us to go show the film at Disney Studios, which was a huge honor for us, as well as Blizzard. and then we won a bunch of film festivals. And the funny thing that happened from this is we started getting a bunch of commercial work that was underwater. We became the underwater specialist, even though we never shot anything underwater. Tran doesn't even know how to swim. But we became the go-to underwater people because we know how to use V-ray fog and then screen particles on top of it. So this was funny. So we were in charge of like a full underwater diving unit, $100,000 a day shoot because of V-ray fog. So it's pretty funny. And the great thing from all this is that Thunder Road Pictures, the producer of Sicario, John Wick, they have optioned this, so it's being turned into a feature film now. So I will be directing it. Tran is producer and designer, running the production design team, and we hope to have this in the theater in a few years. So that's basically it. What's next besides this is we're already starting to work on other projects, and this is one of the projects that we'd like to go back to. This is some of the artwork that was made for it. So we do want to do kid stuff like the Green Ruby Pumpkin short that we did first, and then we want to jump back to doing drama. We want to jump back between the two, but we always want to do fantasy. And this is a couple more pieces. And we also wanted to tell some more stories of the Niño, and originally we wanted to do an opening sequence entirely in animation, and this was scrapped because we just couldn't do it in time, but this was the original artwork that was done, which we hope to come back to and do it all in 2D animation the way Walt Disney Studios used to do it, and this is an early pencil test. But when we got to this point, we're like, we gotta just chill out. We just gotta, we'll do this next time. So that's it, that's all I got.